Africa, the Black Continent, the cradle of mankind and for centuries the destination of longing for adventurers, explorers and researchers from all over the world who ventured into the unknown depths of the continent in search of new discoveries. The African continent is huge and stretches over 30 million square kilometers. It is the second largest continent in the world after Asia, is home to over 1.4 billion people and consists of 54 countries, each with its own unique culture, language and history. On our journey today, we will visit the countries of the Maghreb and be enchanted by the landscapes of Morocco, Algeria and Tunisia. We begin our journey in the northwest of the continent, in Morocco, where the first settlements were established around 1.3 million years ago. Morocco is separated from Europe by the Straits of Gibraltar. At around 459,000 square kilometers, Morocco is one of Africa's smaller countries in terms of area, but due to its location between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea, it has a very diversified landscape. This ranges from the coastal regions in the north and west to the Atlas Mountains and deserts, and spans various climate zones from the Mediterranean climate in the northwest to the Saharan continental climate in the south and southeast. The coasts of the Mediterranean Sea in the north, with its many bays and capes, are steep and rocky, while the Atlantic coast is rather flat, sandy, and hardly indented. Morocco has a coastline of approximately 3,346 kilometers, of which 512 kilometers belong to the Mediterranean coast, which stretches from Saïda to Cap Spartel. The remaining 2,934 kilometers belong to the Atlantic coast in the west, with well-known destinations such as Agadir, Essaouira, or Sidi Ifni, and stretch from Cap Spartel to La Guira. Behind the coast lie vast coastal plains, followed inland by the Meseta Plateau, a step-like landscape with altitudes of up to 450 meters. Morocco's mountain region is impressive and consists of 4 main mountain ranges: the Rif Mountains, the Middle Atlas, the High Atlas, and the Anti-Atlas. In the north, towards Spain, lies the Rif Mountains, which run along the Mediterranean coast and whose highest peak is the Jebel Tidigine at around 2,456 meters. White houses with blue roofs. These images of the Greek island of Santorini are world famous. But the name Chefchaouen does not conjure up images in most people's minds. Yet the blue city, with its blue walls, charming alleyways and relaxed atmosphere, has become a real hotspot for Instagram influencers in recent years, who find numerous picturesque backgrounds for colorful image compositions in the maze of houses and alleyways. The Rif Mountains are separated from the Middle Atlas by a furrow, which is a very important gateway to Morocco and is also known as the Gate of Taza. This mountainous region lies inland and impressive with its peaks, some of which are over 3,000 meters high, and of which the highest is Bou Nasser at 3,354 meters. There are many watercourses or wadis here, which carry water or are dry depending on the season. The Al Galmani Sidi Ali excursion destination at an altitude of over 2,000 meters the largest mountain lake with crystal clear water, and the Usud waterfalls. Cedar forests and the royal cities of Meknes and Fez, which are located a little to the north at the foot of the mountains, stretch for around 300 kilometers along its massif. If you visit the Usud waterfalls in the province of Asilal, you will not only see the most beautiful and highest waterfalls in Morocco, which cascade 110 meters down red rocky slopes past lianas and fig trees, but you can also enjoy the sight of monkeys at dusk. To the south is the rocky massif of the High Atlas, which stretches far beyond the borders of Algeria with a length of up to 750 kilometers. Its highest mountain, the Jebel Toubkal, at around 4,167 meters, is even suitable for ski tours. The Dades Gorge, the sites of the Todra Gorge, and the nearby clay castles are interesting destinations for experiencing the Berber culture and the flora and fauna of Morocco. Southern of the High Atlas lies the Anti-Atlas Mountains, which gradually decrease in altitude towards the south and slowly merge into the hot and dry desert regions with their oasis towns. On the border with Algeria lie the shimmering red ochre sand dunes of Erg Shebi and Erg Shegaga, which are popular with tourists. Morocco impresses with its cultural diversity, extraordinary landscapes, and varied climate zones, which, depending on the geographical location, range from the Mediterranean climate in the north and west to the hot continental climate in summer and very cold in winter, to the hot and dry desert climate. Let's now head east to Algeria, the largest country in Africa with an area of around 2,382,000 square kilometers. With a population of around 44.3 million, the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria is rather sparsely populated. But Algeria has a fascinating history, which began with the first human settlement in the north of what is now Algeria around 1.78 million years ago, in the Upper Paleolithic period. Chipping stones, splinters, and fragments of retouched workpieces have been discovered at various sites, which have been proven to have been used to process hunted game, such as rhinoceroses, elephants, and horses. The landscape at this time consisted of savannas, which provided sufficient food for these animals. The oldest human remains in North Africa were discovered in 1954 in the northwest of what is now Algeria and dated to around 700,000 years ago. 3 lower jaws, a parietal bone, and several teeth found were attributed to the human species Homo erectus, while 1 jaw and some of the teeth came from a child aged around 8 to 10 years. But back to the present day. After a long and turbulent history, which included rule by the Ottoman Empire and colonial rule by France, Algeria became independent in 1962. Although around 80% of this huge country consists of a desert landscape with no vegetation, it also has over 1,200 kilometers of Mediterranean coastline and the Tassili-Nancher National Park, a UNESCO World Natural and Cultural Heritage Site. Around 96% of the population live in the north of the country, on the southern coast of the Mediterranean and in the Atlas Mountains, while the southern part of Algeria, known as Le Grand Sud, is only sparsely populated. In Algiers, the capital of Algeria, the Old Town and the districts of Sidi Abd Allah, Sidi Ramdan, and Mohammed Sharif, with the Turkish houses and palaces, are particularly worth seeing. The Basilica of Notre-Dame d'Afrique, Le Jardin de Saint-Domingue, or the Mémorial du Martyr are further stops on our short visit. The Mediterranean climate on the coast also makes excursions to the Roman sites in Tipaza, Demila, and Timgad, or to coastal towns such as Oran or Annaba, the birthplace of St. Augustine, very appealing. Behind the narrow edge of the Mediterranean coast lies the steeply rising Tel Atlas mountain range. It is divided by basins, longitudinal and transverse valleys, and reaches heights of up to 1,963 meters in the Ouarsenis Mountains southwest of Algiers and an altitude of 2,308 meters east of Algiers in Kabylie, where there are still contiguous forest areas. Mediterranean shrubs such as maki, Aleppo pines, cork oaks, and holm oaks grow on its irrigated northern side, as well as atlas cedars at higher altitudes from 1,600 meters upwards. The southern side of the Tel Atlas then slopes down to the highlands of the Shots, which are marshy salt lakes at 1,000 to 391 meters. Further south, the Sahara Atlas begins, running parallel to the coast and the Tel Atlas, with the highest mountain reaching 2,328 meters. The foothills of the Algerian Sahara begin at the edges of the Atlas Mountains, covering up to 85% of the land area. In the north, the steppe is still populated with half-grass and wormwood plants, before turning into a largely vegetation-free desert. Plants such as date palms can still be found in the peripheral areas and in oases, but in the majority of the Algerian Sahara, the Scirocco blows over a vegetation-free dune landscape. But the desert is alive, and there are still some wild animal species, such as gazelles, desert foxes, maned sheep, Barbary macaques, and the occasional jerboas, snakes, lizards, scorpions, and even cheetahs. This area is characterized by rocky plateaus such as the Hamada du Dra or the Hamada di Gir in the west, and by steppe landscapes such as the Tessili Nasher National Park in the southeast. The Ahaga Massif rises in the south, with the Tahat at 2,908 meters, the highest mountain in Algeria. This desert-like high mountain range is of volcanic origin and still prone to earthquakes. The dune areas of the Chad Basin lie to the south of the national park. Coastal towns with a mild Mediterranean climate, rugged mountain ranges, which are partly forested but often rather sparsely vegetated, and where it can get very cold at high altitudes, a humid winter steppe climate in the highlands of the Shots, and a merciless desert climate, with daily temperature fluctuations of sometimes more than 20 degrees. Algeria's landscapes are fascinating, and its history is a reflection of the most diverse cultures from the early days of mankind to modern times. At the end of our trip, we head to Tunisia, which is also the northernmost country in Africa. At 163,610 square kilometers, it is the smallest country in the Maghreb and North Africa, but has an exciting and eventful history. Hunters and gatherers lived in the area that is now Tunisia in the Paleolithic age, Berber tribes migrated here in the Neolithic age, and later the Phoenicians founded the Carthaginian Empire here. After occupation by the Romans, conquest by the Arabs, subjugation by the Ottoman Empire, a certain degree of independence under the Husseinid dynasty, and liberation from French occupation, Tunisia gained its independence in 1956. Of its approximately 12 million inhabitants, almost 700,000 live in the capital Tunis and the Tunis region in the north. Mosques and colorful bazaars with goods reminiscent of Oriental fairy tales, as well as modern office buildings, shopping centers, and luxury stores. Tunis offers an interesting mix of Orient and Occident, of tradition and modernity. The north of Tunisia consists of fertile plains and mountainous sections in which Mediterranean deciduous and scrub forests with holm oaks, cork oaks, and Aleppo pines grow. The Maghreb mountain range begins to the northeast of this, which slopes down to the Mediterranean Sea in a mostly steep, rocky coast. The side of the mountain range facing away from the wind merges into the valley basin of the Medjerda, which carries water all year round and on whose banks some of the most important agricultural areas are located. The approximately 220-kilometer-long section of the Tell Atlas, known as the Dorsal, runs from the northeast, starting at the western edge of Cape Bon, to the southwest and features the highest mountains in Tunisia, the 1,544-meter-high Jebel Jambi and the 1,295-meter-high Jebel Zagwan. To the east of the Dorsal, along the Mediterranean coast, lies the coastal strip known as the Sahel, which is very fertile thanks to the easterly winds that bring rain and, among other things, makes it possible to grow large crops of olive trees. To the south of the Dorsal is the region of the central Tunisian steppes, which forms a transition to the Shots Depression at its southern edge with a northern mountain fringe. Salt lakes and oases characterize this landscape, which merges into the desert landscape of the Sahara further south at the eastern Great Erg. The Shebel National Park is also located here. Along the Mediterranean coast, around the Gulf of Gabes, there are sandy flat coasts and lagoons with several islands off the coast, including Djerba. The center and south of Tunisia are characterized by an arid climate, but large groundwater reserves in certain regions have enabled the expansion of existing oases. Tunisia has Mediterranean and arid climate zones, with rainfall decreasing from north to south and from west to east. The north is characterized by a wet winter and dry summer climate. The steppe region is characterized by hot summers, cold winters, and generally low rainfall. The Mediterranean coast, influenced by the sea, offers a balanced climate, and south of the Sahara, a desert climate with large temperature fluctuation prevails. With a rich and varied history, a pleasant climate all year round depending on the region, colorful bazaars with a diverse range of goods, archaeological sites that offer a fascinating insight into the life and work of a powerful ancient civilization, and atmospheric landscapes, Tunisia is one of the most interesting countries in North Africa. Steep, rocky or flat sandy coasts on the Atlantic or the Mediterranean, rugged barren rock formations, mountains several thousand meters high, or gently rising wooded hills in the Atlas Mountains and its foothills. Lively, colorful cities, bazaars with oriental flair, deciduous and scrub forests, holm oak and cork oak forests, steppes and deserts, a mild Mediterranean climate, or the hot winds of the desert regions. The countries of the Maghreb are sites of human history, and the landscapes are witnesses to climate change. People settled in what are now Morocco, Algeria and Tunisia several 100,000 years ago and left their mark. The landscapes were more fertile and greener. There were rhinos and elephants, Barbary lions and Atlas bears, some of which survived into the 20th century. Even if the deserts continue to expand, the flora and fauna found today proves that life can thrive even under the most adverse conditions. With one last look at some of the breathtaking landscapes of the Maghreb countries, we bid you farewell. We hope you've enjoyed our journey and we hope you've learned something new today. See you next time!